Hello, sports fans. It's me, Sportsman Z, Bob Zolke. And today we're going to talk about Strat-O-Matic baseball, particularly. But before we get into that, subscribe to the channel. I just want to let you know, subscribe to the channel. Ring the bell once you subscribe so that you'll know whenever I post a video. Share it with other people if you like the content. You think other people might be interested, especially other Strat fanatics in the case of this particular video. But anyway, let's get on with the discussion at hand, and that is going to be the baseball ratings. If you're a Strat-O-Matic baseball fan, obviously you know that yesterday the ratings came out for Strat-O-Matic. Now, I want to preface that by saying a couple of things, okay? The first thing is that the ratings that came out yesterday are kind of like preliminary ratings. They're kind of a sneak peek. They're not the finalized everything, what's going to appear on the card ratings. So Strat can make some adjustments and changes to those, and in some cases I've heard at least that they sometimes do make changes to the ratings that they send out in late December like this as previews. And in at least one case, that's very good, because they will definitely need to make a change in one of the cases. And that case is, and the second thing I want to say before we get into these ratings. Now, these are my opinions, okay? So the beauty of that is that you can't say I'm wrong. If I say, such and such shouldn't be a whatever at whatever position, you can't say I'm wrong, because that's my opinion. So that's the first thing. And the other thing I wanted to say is that I think, in general, for this game, the way the game is played, I think Strat-O-Matic does overall a good job of rating the players. But every year there's always that guy or two or 6 or 35 that you find that you say, why was this guy rated like this? I don't understand this. Especially with teams that you see a lot, like your favorite team, or the Dodgers, the Red Sox, the Yankees, the Mets. You see them a lot because they're on Sunday Night Baseball, and Monday Night Baseball, and Wednesday Night Baseball, and Friday afternoon when you got nothing to do baseball. But I digress. I mean, if you've seen some of my past videos, you know how I feel about ESPN and the 5 teams that they always show. But anyway, getting back to my point, if you are familiar with a team and their players, then there's a lot of room for people to say, hey, I don't think he should have been this, or this guy shouldn't have been that, or why did this guy get this rating? Another thing I will say about the ratings is that, in addition to the fact that I think in general Strat does a good job of rating the players in accordance with how they're supposed to play in the game, I think another thing that Strat does do is, well, there's 2 things. The first thing is they've admitted, or I've read somewhere, that they've admitted, or that they've said before, or that they've insinuated that they will rate somebody at a position that they didn't play in the year that they're being rated in. Or no, I take that back. No, they don't. No, they don't do that. But they will rate somebody at a position that they played, but they will consider their previous ratings, like the rating from the year before, the rating from the year before that. Because if you've ever noticed, there's players that get stuck in a rut and they just can't get out of it, Like a perfect example from my childhood was Mike Greenwell. Mike Greenwell was always a left field 4. Didn't matter You could have put that guy on a rocket ship and had him out there in left field, grabbing everything that went out to left field, but he still would have been a 4. Because, in part, Strat considers what he was the year before. So, that's one thing. The other thing I want to mention is that I think Strat, and this is a theory actually I got from a friend of mine, but I think there's a lot to be said for it, and that is that I think they rate players sometimes kind of like on a team basis, not individual. And they do that because, like, for instance, let's say the Red Sox. Let's use the Red Sox of last year, not this past year, but last year when they were the world champions. The Red Sox players, a lot of them, especially key players, maybe shortstop, second base, might have gotten ratings that were higher than they should have gotten for those individual players, because Strat had to make the Red Sox good. And they had to make them good enough that if you did a replay of the Red Sox against the American League of that year, especially if you followed everything to the T, who exactly played in how many games and how many innings, they have to make it so that the Red Sox either are the world champions, win 100 games, 100 plus, and are the world champions or come close to it. So that, that has to happen. And part of making that happen is you take individual players at key positions and you make them a little better than they should be. And I think the opposite is also true. Players on bad teams get worse ratings than they really should be, and I'm going to mention one specifically, so stick around for that. Players will get ratings a little worse than they should be because they're on a team that was bad, and they have to make sure that that team is bad. And so part of doing that is they can, they don't have to leave it entirely up to the batting and pitching chance. They can say, okay, well, let's give them bad fielders too. So even if the pitcher gets a ground ball X, which could be an out, it won't be because it's hit to a bad fielding fielder. And that team will still be bad. So that's all my preface arguments and my prelude to this. And there's not many players, really. There are not many players on this list that I take issue with. And that's because there's, first of all, like I said, I was talking before about teams you're very familiar with. Well, I'm not very familiar with a lot of the teams. And I'm also not very familiar with some of the rookies that came up. So I didn't make comments about anybody that I'm not at all like I don't even know who that guy is. I'm not going to say he shouldn't be a 4, for instance. So anyway, let's get into this. The first one, and the one that really does need to be corrected by Strat, is Trey Mancini. Because in the ratings that came out yesterday, I don't know if you're a Baltimore fan out there, you may have noticed this, or if you have Trey Mancini on one of your teams, you may have noticed this, but he is not rated at all at first base. And he played 56 games at first base. So, I can see if you played a game, maybe 2, I can see Strat maybe not rating you there. But, number 1, he played 56 games there. Number 2, he played first base last year as well. So that goes back to, that Strat sometimes will take into consideration ratings from previous years. So I got to believe on this rating preview that they sent out, what I think happened is they just forgot to put that on there, on the sheet. It would be very hard for me to believe that they just forgot to rate him at first base and that somebody's going to write a letter and then they're going to say, oh, yeah, right, we forgot to give Mancini a rating at first. No. Probably just didn't include it on the sheet for whatever reason, a misprint. But anyway, that's a glaring something that I noticed. Another one is Benintendi, who is a 3 in left field and center field. Now, center field, maybe I don't have that much heartburn with, but a 3 in left, when I think he was a 2 last year. And again, this potentially goes back to, the Red Sox as a team. The year before this past year, they were the world champions. So, of course, Benintendi was a left field 2. I think he was, anyway. That's the way I remember it. Maybe I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, leave it in the comments. But I think he was a 2 in left when the Red Sox were the world champions. And now he's a 3. Seems a little odd to me. World champions, he's a 2. Bad Red Sox team, he's a 3. You see where I'm going with that? Another guy, and this is the guy that I was thinking about when I was talking about that bad team, bad rating, is Timmy Anderson. Tim Anderson is a shortstop 4. Now, I'm a White Sox fan. I can tell you that he is not a 4 at shortstop. And I want to say something else, too, about this. Tim Anderson, the only position he played was shortstop. And he played shortstop quite often, like most of their games. So, in my mind, if you play a position exclusively and you play it, you're the main guy there. Like you're the team's main second baseman. You're the team's main shortstop. You're their main third baseman. And that's the only place you play, you shouldn't get a 4 or a 5. Because to me, to get a 4 or a 5 at a position that you play every day, day in and day out, and that's the only position you play, you basically have to go out there with your cleats tied together. So, he really should be a 3. So I don't know why he's a 4. Now, kind of the next guy kind of goes against that formula that I was talking about, and that is on the same team, on the White Sox, Yolmer Sanchez is a second base 1. But really, believe me, I don't know where that comes from. I wouldn't say he's a second base 1. If Altuve's not a 1, Yolmer F. Sanchez is not a 1. Okay? So, I don't know what possessed them to make him a 1, but they did. So now we move on. We're moving along to the Tampa Bay Rays and Daniel Robertson. Daniel Robertson is a 2 at second base, third base, and shortstop. 3 positions. The man divided his time between 3 positions, and he didn't even start all the time for Tampa Bay. But how many games did he have at each? At second base, he had 26 games. At third base, he had 43. At shortstop, he had 16. So you're telling me that a guy that played 16 games at shortstop, you're confident enough in those 16 games that you can give that guy a 2. Or you're confident enough in his 26 games at second that you can give him a 2. I don't know that I would complain too much about the third base rating of 2 because he played 43 games there. But still, even 43 games is only a quarter of a season. He played a quarter of a season at a position, and they felt like that was enough to say, yeah, he's a 2. That's usually the kind of guy that gets the 4. Is he doesn't play all the time, and then when he does play, he's dividing his time between 3 or 4 or 6 positions. That's usually the guy who gets a 4. Not the guy that plays every day at the same position. Then you got Gerard Dyson. I don't even know how to spell or pronounce that first name. With Arizona. And he is a 1 in all outfields. Now, I'm going to say this about that, and that is that I guess I shouldn't really be too I shouldn't be too bent out of shape about this one, because he played 103 games in center, and he's a 1 in center. And you know where I'm going with this. If you're a center field 1, according to the rules of Strat, you can play left or right as a 1 as well. Even if it's not even on your card, you can play 1. You can play as a 1 in left or right. So, how much does it really hurt that Strat just gave him the rating that he could get if you decide to play him there? But the fact still remains that he played only 16 games in left field and only 2 in right. So, you know, I don't know. I mean, on that I'm kind of up in the air because of their rules. Because their rules say a center field 1 can play, or a center field anything, can play left and right as the same exact thing. So, I don't know. And then there's Michael Lorenzen. Michael Lorenzen is a pitcher, you're saying. Or you should be saying that, especially if you're a Cincinnati fan. And you're right, he is a pitcher. But he was rated a 2 in all 3 outfields. All 3 outfields. Now we're talking about a guy that's not even his primary job, let alone he doesn't play he doesn't divide all of his playing time among those 3 outfield positions. He doesn't even play there much. He played center field 18 times. He played left field 8 times. And he played right field 4 times. Now again, we kind of go back to the outfield thing. If you're going to rate him a 2 in center field, and you're Strat-O-Matic, you might as well say to yourself, well, the guy played left and right as well. Why don't we just give him a 2 there anyway? Because if some guy wants to play him in left or right, and we rate him a center field 2, and let's say we rate him a right field and a left field 3, according to the rules, they can override that and play him as a 2 there. At least I would think you can. I don't know. I don't do it much. But even so, he only played 18 games in center. So you're telling me that based on 18 games, you know he's a center field 2. He's as good as pick any center fielder from the past or even right now who plays center field every day. The guy goes out there, he busts his butt, and he goes out to center field, and he plays center field for your team every day, and he's a center field 2, and he's got the same rating as Michael Lorenzen, who pitches. Yeah, if I was that center field 2, I wouldn't be happy about it. I'll tell you that. So that's all I got. That's just a couple of things I noticed, a few things, that I noticed from their rating list. But, what do you guys think? You can let me know. Leave a comment below. Think I'm off base? Let me know that too. Or if I'm off base on a couple of these guys, Give me a thumbs up if you like the video. Give me a thumbs down if you don't. And again, remember, subscribe, ring the bell, send it to other people. But for right now, it's me, Sportsman Z, Bob Zolke, saying there is no crying in Strat, and signing off.